He just couldn't resist opening that door, could he? That's a scene from The Brinks Job, one of 5 new movies we'll be looking at on sneak previews, 2 critics evaluating the new movies in town. Across the aisle from me is Gene Siskel, the film critic of the Chicago Tribune and CBS TV News in Chicago.
And this is Roger Ebert, the Pulitzer Prize-winning film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times. Now, in addition to The Brinks Job, we'll be reviewing Hardcore, a tough new film by the writer of Taxi Driver. Hardcore stars George C. Scott as a deeply religious man whose daughter has run away from home and into the California pornography business. Also, we'll take a look at The Warriors, a film certain to make my year's 10 worst list. It's about a war between street gangs in New York City. And Quintet, a film directed by Robert Altman and starring Paul Newman. Now, Roger and I don't see eye to eye on several of these movies, but our major disagreement comes right away with the first film, The Great Train Robbery.
Well, I like it, so I take it that you didn't.
You're right.
Okay. Back in 1855, they said it had to be impossible to rob a moving train. The logistics were just too much for even the most brilliant thieves, but criminals in Victorian England shared the optimism of their age. They believed all things were possible if only you approached them with logic and courage and a diabolical imagination. And that's the premise behind The Great Train Robbery, a comedy thriller about the first train robbery in history. The target is a safe containing gold bars, a payroll for the British Army. The safe is on a train and it's locked with 4 keys, and so the first step, of course, is to steal the keys. The criminals take a banker to a bordello and set him up with their seductive accomplice.
I am very pleased to make your acquaintance.
Oh, I as well.
You are nervous?
No, I just thought we might become better acquainted.
Mon chéri, you are nervous. There is no need to be. I will take care of every little thing. And every big thing. Oh, such a strong man.
Well, yes, I did a bit of sport when I was younger, of course.
Oh, but you are still young and very strong.
You want this off as well?
It is best, no? The touch of flesh to flesh. The warmth of the body.
This is the French way, is it?
Mon cher. What is this?
A key, but I'm afraid...
Oh, there must be nothing. Nothing between us.
Oh, yes.
Now, if you will sit on the lid.
The what?
The lid, the bed.
It was Leslie Ann Down, making it 1 key down, 3 to go. You might remember her from Upstairs, Downstairs. Her fellow conspirators in the Great Train Robbery are Sean Connery and Donald Sutherland. And once they steal the keys, they discover they have a new problem. How do you get on board the luggage car that contains the safe with the gold?
It can't be worked from within. I mean, even if I was to be able to get inside the van, I'd be locked inside there until it gets into Folkestone Station. And who do you think's behind all of this, huh? Only the crushers themselves, that's who. 2 plainclothes jacks were on the platform tonight, saying as how a Mr. Sims was planning to rob the Crimean gold tomorrow. I wish you could have heard them talk. They don't have a very high opinion of your intelligence, but they do credit your nerve. And they put crushers on every station on the line and at Folkestone. So, here we are. Burgess is no good to us. I can't get into the van on account of that jack opening everything. And even if I could get into the van, I couldn't get the gold out on account of they've locked the door from the outside. So what's it to have 4 keys, I ask you? 4 keys or 40 keys, what difference it make? It don't make no bloody difference at all. It's a waste, the whole damn thing, and nothing to be done about it. All on account of they found you out, Mr. Edward Bloody Sims Pierce. That was something we didn't think of, wasn't it? Huh? What have you got to say about that? Find me a dead cat.
Sean Connery obviously has a plan. Later in the movie, he puts it into action by climbing on top of the train in an attempt to break into the car with the gold. The Great Train Robbery is a classy caper film steeped in the atmosphere of the Victorian age. Sometimes it seems to move a little slowly for a caper, but times were simpler then. And Sean Connery and Donald Sutherland have a nice sort of camaraderie and understated irony and wit that make the movie a literate and a civilized entertainment.
Well, I'm not as big a fan of it as you are. I didn't hate it, but the very thing that you mentioned moves a little slowly at times. That's really what happened to me. In that bordello scene, or even in that conversation among the three of them scene, it just seems so lackluster and slow that for a comedy piece, you know what happened? I started to see the actors rather than the costumes they were wearing, and the film sort of broke down for me.
That didn't really happen to me. It seems to me that a period piece like this takes place 125 years ago. You want a different pace. You might remember a film that I think we both liked a couple of years ago, The 7% Solution,
right,
which was set at about the same time. I think you have to have that kind of pacing in order to get the atmosphere.
I think if I looked at that film, I wouldn't find those long speeches, but maybe not. More important, I think that this film, by comparison, we got later on in the show, The Brinks Job, which is also about a robbery, also a period film, 1950s Boston. That one, I bought the costume. Maybe I do have a requirement for a little faster action.
Well, I'm not saying this is the greatest caper I've ever seen, but I thought it was fun. I thought it had style. I did like the acting.
When they finally got to that robbery, it did get a little bit exciting. Now, we differ on that film, but not on our next one. Our next picture is certain to arouse a great deal of controversy. It's hardcore, written and directed by Paul Schrader, the same man who wrote the ultra-violent film Taxi Driver. Now, like Taxi Driver, hardcore is set in a world of ugliness, the world of porno bookstores and porno films. George C. Scott plays a deeply religious man whose teenage daughter runs away from him, away from their home in Michigan. She never comes back after she visits Southern California for a religious convention. So Scott hires a private detective, played by Peter Boyle, to find her, and Boyle does, sort of. He discovers that Scott's daughter is caught up in the porno game. She's made a hardcore, rough skin flick. And in a porno shop, Boyle shows Scott the film, and it nearly destroys him. Now he's really desperate to find his daughter.
Where is she?
I don't know.
Where'd you get that film?
I bought it in a store in L.A. I gotta keep it.
Who made it?
I don't know.
What do you mean?
Wait a minute. Slow down. A film like this, 8mm film, costs $200 or $300 to make. Sold out right in the store. Shown in peep machines. It's impossible to track down. Nobody makes it. Nobody shows it. Nobody sees it. It's like it doesn't even exist.
What's it called?
It was called Slave of Love when I bought it. Next time it's sold, it'll be called something else.
The police.
The police? You know more than the police do.
You think she's all right?
Yeah, probably.
George C. Scott is about to enter a world that's really going to knock him for a loop. And many of the films written by Paul Schrader give us a man with traditional values coming up against the new permissiveness, which seemingly has very few values. Later in the film, Scott enlists the aid of a young prostitute, Susan Hubley, to help him find his daughter. And their different value systems clash in a beautifully written scene.
You don't understand. When I was 15, I was turning tricks in Vegas. I was taking all the older girls' regular customers. It wasn't my fault. And then they put out a contract on me. I didn't even know it was illegal.
Look, Nicky, don't go on, please. You and I, we just have very different ideas about sex, that's all.
Why, you're a sex fiend?
No.
Huh? Neither am I.
That's all you do.
It's not all... Look, how important do you think sex is?
Not very.
Well, then we're just alike. I mean, you think it's so unimportant that you don't even do it. I think it's so unimportant that I don't care who I do it with.
No, we're not alike. You could never understand a person like me. I'm a mystery to you. A middle-class person, Midwesterner, goes to church, believes in God, and who believes that at the end of his life he'll be redeemed. It doesn't make any sense to you. I don't know why I should have to justify myself to you. I don't care about the things you care about. I don't care what's happening in Los Angeles and New York. I don't care about the movies or TV. I don't care who's on Johnny Carson.
Well, what do you care about?
I care about my daughter.
That's a very unusual scene for a film in the 70s. Terrific there, seeing people talk about personal feelings. Usually in movies these days we get people being hit by objects. That's terrific writing in that scene. It captures the rage, I suspect, of many people that they feel toward things new, cheap, and sexy. Hardcore is a shocking, foul-mouthed, violent, properly R-rated film, but it's a worthwhile, provocative discussion of values old and new. I liked it a lot, except for its slapdash ending. Hardcore is fascinating, I think, when it contrasts the religious world of George C. Scott with the grungy, violent world of the California porno scene.
Scott is really good in this film because he makes the character work. Here is somebody who, in the hands of another actor, could have seemed to be prudish or uptight.
Yes.
He has his values, he brings a dignity and a manliness to them so that we can really know who he is. And then when he meets the girl who is his total opposite, the other side of the sexual revolution, the young hooker, they are able to somehow transcend the things that come between them, and really make a contact as human beings.
Yeah, they really are. There's a meeting of the minds in that scene. It's a very powerful scene. I think people may be surprised by the film. We didn't show, obviously, the rough, explicit sex stuff in the movie, and people may be shocked by this.
Don't you think somebody going to see a movie called Hardcore would be kind of braced before they walked in?
Well, they should be, and that's that term is an inside porno business term, hardcore. I think that also in the film is sort of shocking is the way the film goes after extreme religion. The film is, in terms of extreme behavior, tries to draw some links and connections that people might find kind of rough. So it's a film of real ideas.
It's another good film by Paul Schrader, who wrote Taxi Driver and who directed Blue Collar and who is really dealing with important American issues. So that's Hardcore. Our next film is by Robert Altman, and one thing you've got to say about Robert Altman is he's a filmmaker who never makes the same movie twice. It's like he starts at ground zero and moves out in different directions every time. He makes a war comedy like MASH, or a Western, a detective film, or a slice of American life like Nashville. And now with Quintet, his latest film, he moves into a territory so alien and uncharted that even Altman himself seems to be flying on instruments. This movie takes place in the future when a new ice age has enveloped the Earth, and the survivors play their own sort of deadly game. The game is called Quintet, and when you play it, it's best to go armed with a knife.
All you need is a 5 and you have him. Then it's between you and Duca.
3 to 2.
Good. Now it's the two of you.
She'd be giving you good advice. It's obvious it's you she wants to face, and not me.
Are you so certain? You're so predictable. I sometimes lose interest. That's not good. Run away from her, Redstone. Let her make the mistake.
I get impatient. I can't stand waiting around. I said I didn't like games.
Why do you play?
Education. 4 and a 1.
Good, you got her.
Dead.
It's all yours, Ambrosia.
So come, everybody. Put up the dead man. You only made one tactical error. You killed her in your own sector. No one can protect you now. All I need is a 1, and I win. 1 is my lucky number. Double 1. That's what I call overkill.
Got killed with 1 throw. That's very impressive.
Being 6 men is an advantage. It's also boring. I just start to get excited and it's all over.
That was Paul Newman playing the game of Quintet with B.B. Anderson. The game and the players occupy a building in an abandoned city. And in fact, the movie was shot last winter in what's left over from Montreal's Expo 67. Altman does a brilliant job of creating his future world, but he's not nearly as successful when he tries to make sense out of the deadly Quintet game. At first, we can't figure out what's going on. And then when we finally do, the story turns out to be not nearly as interesting as the world it takes place in. These are strange and brave people living in a bizarre society, and somehow we get the feeling that they just wouldn't have the time for the artificial mysteries of a game.
Right.
You know what I think happened? Robert Altman sabotaged his own film. He created a world too interesting to contain people this simple.
Yes, I even maybe disliked it more than you did. I couldn't understand the game, didn't know what people were trying to accomplish. And also, I didn't find the world that interesting that he created. I thought it's the standard sci-fi world, bombed out city, people, scavengers, and dogs running around eating people. I didn't think anything was special about the world.
Well, the world, the idea for the world might have been right out of other movies we've seen or novels that we've read, but the way he visualized it kind of captured me. The photography, the visual strategy, the art direction made it very real. I felt cold when I watched it.
Well, it's all surface stuff, though, because I think what's really wrong with this picture is that we don't care about any of the characters. I don't even know if he cares about them.
I didn't care about them. You know, the funny thing is, in almost all of Altman's films, whether they're good or bad, whether we like them or not, they're jammed from wall to wall with a lot of life, with a lot of people. Think about McCabe and Mrs. Miller or Nashville. This film didn't have anyone that I really cared about or that I would remember, I suppose, this time next year.
Yeah, well, our next film is different because it has a character is full of life, I think. In 1950, 7 Boston area criminals pulled off what was then the biggest cash robbery in American history. More than $2.5 million taken from the safe of the Brinks Armored Car Company. Now, when we hear about a crime like that, we expect it to be a razzle-dazzle affair pulled off by criminal masterminds. Well, in fact, the Brinks robbery was a simple, old-fashioned heist because the Brinks Company had lousy security for its corporate safe. The thieves, a bunch of small-timers, were simply walking in and they took the money. How small-time were the crooks? Well, in the film's first robbery, Peter Falk leads his buddies on a safe-cracking job inside a meat-packing house.
Vinny, downstairs. Give me the crowbar. Vinny, did you get downstairs and heat up the fire? What did you meet it? In this bag, 2 small punches.
Tony, I think I found a cash box here. I'm going.
Get the place. More flights, Frank. Second floor.
No, it's not there. Oh, no. That's it. We're surrounded. Let's get the hell out of here. This way, Gussie. Down the chute. Room down the end, Frank. Be careful, Dave. In there.
Nobody in here but us chickens. Falk eventually beats that rap, and emboldened, he and his buddies then knock off a couple of Brinks trucks on the street. And that proves to be so easy, he then conceives of a plan to rob the main Brinks safe. He talks about his dream robbery with his wife, Jenna Rollins, over dinner in a restaurant.
I'm through with them trucks, Mom. Some change. I figure if I can hit them people for nickels and dimes, I ought to be able to take their beat.
People have been talking about that for years, Poppy. That might be too tough for you.
Why do you think they never reported what we raised?
Only thing I can figure is they don't want no headlines. I mean, who's going to want to put their money in a place where you can take $100 grand off them just like that?
That's right. They got a reputation to cover. And it's their reputation that's going to take them down.
Yeah, but trucks are one thing. The Pete's got to be guarded like the king.
Mommy, buildings is like people. I mean, they got stories and they got secrets to tell you. All you gotta do is look. Some buildings got smart faces. You know what I mean? I mean, they're alert. And they're staring right back at you and they're saying, I dare you to come in and grab me. And there's other buildings that are dumb, like the Brinks. I mean, when I was a kid, I thought to myself, if I ever worked in a place like that, I'd cut my throat. I mean, them people are bored. They're dead. They don't know it yet. They got all that dough in there, and they treat it like it was garbage. They got no feeling for their work. The building is asleep. And all that money is in there, and it's being held prisoner. And it's screaming at me through the walls. It's yelling, hey, Tony, come in and grab me. Get me out of here. Well, I'm going in, and I'm going to get it out.
The Brinks, Poppy.
Brinks.
He's irresistible there. This is a very gentle, often whimsical movie. It's a nostalgia piece about the 50s, a love letter to a more simple time of crime when people weren't getting hurt by crime so much. The Brinks Job is by no means a great film, but I found it charming, well acted, and dedicated to the principle that deep inside most of us, there's a part of us that would really get a kick out of knocking off a bank. I walked out of the theater and I saw a bank sign and I thought about it a little bit.
I'm sure you did. You just want to star in that machine that takes pictures of the robbers.
No.
I'll tell you, this film does have two things that you don't often find in the same film. First of all, the characters are terrific. I mean, they are characters, you know, the talk, you know, the dialogue, the period and everything. I've never seen Peter Falk do a better job of acting. And at the same time in the film, the director, William Friedkin, makes it very clear how they're going to do the Brinks job. We know how they're going to get in, how they're going to get out, what they're going to do while they're there, and he accomplishes all of that without giving us one of those, you know, in most of these films where you have the chalk talk and the X's and the arrows and everything. He doesn't do that at all.
One thing, people hear the name William Friedkin, they know he directed The French Connection. This is not a rough chase picture. Very gentle, very whimsical. It really works its magic on you,
It's a comedy. It's fun. I enjoyed myself. That's more than I can say for the next film. The Warriors is one of those movies that isn't successful and it doesn't work, and yet I have to give it its due. It has a strange fascination all the same. We're never convinced by what we see, but still we're curious about what's going to happen next. The movie is a harsh and violent allegory about New York street gangs, and especially about a gang named the Warriors. Now, at the beginning of the movie, the Warriors attend a mass meeting of all the city's gangs, and when the leader of the meeting is assassinated in the middle of his speech, the Warriors are framed for the murder. So somehow they've got to get all the way back across the city to their home turf. There's a bounty on their heads, and every gang and every cop in town is looking for them. Well, they get separated, and one of the Warriors runs into a girl they've kidnapped from another gang.
Hey, wait!
Still cops all over the place.
Where's the fox?
Cop grabbed him.
So how come you hung around?
I don't know.
Where'd you get the coat?
You ask a lot of questions.
Don't give me that.
I stole it. Cops are looking for somebody in a pink top.
Real tough chick.
Right, you said that before. Now look, if you still want to get to Union Square, I can show you where to grab the train.
Okay. Come on.
Hey!
Dancing nimbly past the third rail. Those actors don't talk or look like street people, and the movie isn't very realistic. Maybe it's not meant to be. I suppose the actors are players in an allegory that uses the whole city as a violent stage, etc., and so on, and the streets are almost totally deserted. They're empty except for the gangs and the cops, and we can't accept either of those sides as real human beings. They're fighting machines caught in a war of phony symbols. The movie finally becomes so artificial, so stylized, and so mannered that it's more of a distraction than an adventure. We're left with a paradox, though. It's not good, but somehow it's not boring.
Well, I'm with you that it's not a very successful film. I found it actually laughable. Some of the dialogue, I tell you, it reminded me of those old 60s cycle films, you know, where the guys revving up their motors. It was laughable, and then it had these high-flown pretensions. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I think maybe you're asking it to be more realistic, like real street gangs or something. I think the director, Walter Hill, wanted to have some kind of a parable about life in the urban jungle. I could see the parable. I couldn't buy it. I wasn't interested. I thought the film was really a waste of time.
Well, I did think it was a waste of time, too, and I don't reward a film particularly because of its high-flown intentions.
Hello, Spot the Wonder Dog. Every time we see Spot on the balcony, that means it's time for Dog of the Week. where each of us picks the week's worst movies.
These films are even worse than The Warriors. Roger, My Dog is Secrets, a confusing, supposedly meaningful English love story that is being billed in some cities as a new film starring Jacqueline Bisset, the beautiful star of The Deep and The Greek Tycoon. Well, Secrets isn't a new film. It was made several years ago, and the only reason it's being brought back to theaters now is that Bisset has a sex scene in the movie where you can see her naked body. The scene lasts about 3 or 4 minutes. She made it before she became a star, and now some Sharpie distributors are trying to capitalize on her bare chest. The film otherwise is thoroughly confusing as it examines secret love relationships entered into by Bisset, by her husband, and by her young daughter. But the real secret in Secrets is that the film is a completely phony ripoff. It's not new.
It's not new. My film is newer, I guess, than Secrets, but it should have been made before the invention of the motion picture. The dog is called The Stranger and the Gunfighter, and it's sort of a United Nations of schlock. It stars a Chinese kung fu expert and an American cowboy in a spaghetti western. It was produced by Italians and shot in Spain and Hong Kong. And how do these people talk to each other? Well, that'd only be a problem if they had anything to say. The kung fu expert has been sent to America to find out what his dead uncle did with a fortune in gold. Well, it turns out that the secret of the gold has been tattooed on the bottoms of 4 of the uncle's girlfriends. And so the Chinese guy and the gunfighter team up to find the girls and get to the bottom of things.
Oh, no.
Then there are lots of phony kung fu fights and boring gun battles, and you know, this film has a little something to disappoint almost everyone.
Well, so much for the dogs. To recap the main movies on the show, Roger and I differed in our opinions about The Great Train Robbery with Sean Connery. Roger liked the PG-rated film. He recommends you see it. I thought the picture had more style than real adventure, so I say no. We agree, however, that George C. Scott gives a riveting performance in Hardcore, a rough R-rated film about old and new values. We both say strongly yes to Hardcore. We both agree that Robert Altman's new movie Quintet with Paul Newman is a mystifying, futuristic mess. A double no for that. We both agree that The Brinks Job is a well-made caper film with wonderful character acting and contagious good humor. And we also agree that the New York City gang fight film The Warriors is destroyed by overwrought symbolism and is more laughable than frightening.
Okay, that's it for this show. Next time, we'll take a look at Agatha, starring Vanessa Redgrave and Dustin Hoffman, and a puzzling mystery about Agatha Christie. Norma Ray with Beau Bridges and Sally Fields, and the North Avenue Irregulars, a new comedy from Walt Disney. Until then, we'll see you at the movies.
Funding for this program is provided by this station and by other public television stations.